I don't know why, but I really needed to read some Papa Hemingway. It has been a long time. I think the last time that I read something of Hemingway's, it was The Old Man and the Sea, and that was years ago. And I do remember that I enjoyed his main novels, and I decided to try his short stories. But unfortunately, I was a bit disappointed or discouraged, and I'm gonna tell you why. Now, here I have two short story compilations. One is the Snows of Kilimanjaro, and then we have Nobody Never Dies. We have, the first 49 short stories, and then we have short stories after the first 49. Unfortunately, overall, I wasn't really engaged with these stories, and yet again, it showed that it demonstrated to me why I generally don't like short stories. And here, Hemingway's short stories are prime examples why I don't like short stories, because his short stories are the beginning of something. There's an idea that never reaches fruition. Basically, his short stories, the good ones at least, they are a shallow synopsis of what a good story should be. Okay, and this is yet again why I hate short stories, is because, generally speaking, with exceptions, short stories never really go anywhere. Short stories tickle you a little bit. Short stories, they seduce you, and then they just leave you hanging. Short stories, a lot of them fail to do what a mature novel can, which is keep you engrossed, immersed, and the good novels, they make you care about the story and the characters. You relate to some of the characters, etc., etc. And then we have a beginning, middle, and conclusion. And a lot of things happen in the plots and etc. But in short stories, especially here in Hemingway, it's just a lot of, I don't want to, offend any Hemingway fans, but they never really go anywhere. It's like, here is, okay, listen, here is how I would define Hemingway's short stories. There's a whole lot of nothing. There's a whole lot of nonsense drivel happening, and then somewhere along the way you stumble upon a golden nugget, a paragraph, a sentence that just catches you off guard, and you're just like, okay, Papa Hemingway, Papa. Okay, this is who Hemingway is in his short stories. It's a whole lot of okay, bro. Like, okay, bullfighting and hunting and fishing. Okay, we get it. And then out of nowhere, Hemingway, Papa, comes out of the woodwork and he just drops a golden nugget, and you're just like caught off guard. This is Hemingway's short stories. Okay, listen. Hopefully nobody will be offended, but a lot of Hemingway's short stories are kind of mid, in my view. Okay? A lot of these short stories that I've read, they weren't impressive to me, with a few exceptions, and I'm gonna mention those exceptions. Okay? I haven't read a ton of short stories, but I've tried, to increase my palate and what have you when it comes to literature. But almost every time I tried somebody's short stories, they never really deliver, with exceptions. And this is what, yet again, I have to repeat myself, why I don't like short stories is because they are the incomplete version of what a novel slash story should be. They have an idea, they have a potential, but they never really go there. They never really reach an acme, a peak, right, of storytelling and characterization. Okay, as a segue, I would say that the short stories of J.D. Salinger are actually probably the only ones that I actually enjoyed, because that J.D. Salinger, to me, you know, was a master of just taking a banal scene and taking banal conversations and turning it around into something interesting, something intimate, something that kept your attention, right? This is why I enjoy, the short stories of J.D. Salinger. He just had that genius touch when it comes to just storytelling and characters. Even the most banal scene and the most banal conversation, uh it's just so interesting. It's just so engrossing. And what J.D. Salinger did is that, he could take any scene, any conversation, and reveal certain subtleties that just uh, kept me fixated and locked in. Whereas with Hemingway, uh, whereas with Papa, uh, I was just like, a lot of times I was just like over it. Okay, and again, he just can't stop. Okay, he just can't stop it with the bullfighting and the hunting and the fishing, and again, and he goes through the motions of explaining to you how fishing is done, every level of fishing from amateur to pro, and then he tells you about all sorts of hunting and hunting various little birds and blah 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 blah. And let me tell you, he's gonna tell you all about the minutia and the trivia related to bullfighting and every matador and the toreador. And I'm just like, bro, you know after a while, it becomes a bit dull. It becomes a bit repetitive, in my view. But I would like to mention the few short stories that kind of caught my attention. That where to me where Papa really shines, where Papa was flexing his muscles. Okay. And of course, we're going to begin with the first one, which is The Short and Happy Life of Francis Macomber. Okay, and immediately, this is a prime example where Hemingway accomplishes what J.D. Salinger did so easily, which is he actually made a short story so interesting, and the subtleties in The Short and Happy Life of Francis Macomber, they're just everywhere, right? And actually, it's an incredibly simple story, but it cuts deep, and then it cuts even deeper in the same wound. With The Short and Happy Life of Francis Macomber, Hemingway is on another level. Okay, at first glance, this story might seem a bit, average, ordinary, but within, or I should say, underneath the ordinary facade, Francis Macomber is something else. And I've watched a couple of reviews Francis Macomber, and there is something that has struck a chord with me with a character in this short story. And from what I've seen, not a lot of people noticed this, or they don't want to talk about it. But the character that struck a chord with me is not Francis Macomber. It's actually his, if I remember correctly, his wife or his girlfriend, but I think it's his wife or his mistress. They're on a safari in Africa. And as we start to read along, we find out that something happened to our boy Francis Macomber. And as we read along, we find out that he got scared in front of a lion and he ran. And everybody in this camp, in his crew, they're kind of embarrassed for this guy, right? His wife is embarrassed for him. You know, the hunter that's leading this safari is kind of embarrassed and awkward because Francis Macomber is, he comes from, the rich class, but he proved to be a coward. And this is one of the main themes in Francis Macomber is that, cowardice. Cowardice. And oh boy, cowardice. It's such a bad thing. And it really struck a chord with me. And nobody really talks about the fact that in the short and happy life of Francis Macomber, his wife is the biggest bitch I have ever read. Like, listen, every time she popped into a scene and did something or said something, I just got the heebie-jeebies. Like, she's such a thought. She's just so she's trash. And here is where Hemingway, excels to such a level. She's so uncomfortable. She's so annoying. She's so irritable. She's a bona fide, genuine bitch. And poor Francis Macomber, he just can't get a break. Right? In every scene where his wife appears, I didn't feel good in my own skin because she just rubbed me the wrong way. I was so astonished. Hemingway wrote her so exactly, so realistically that I was just astonished. This character is such a bitch on such a level. Listen, she's so embarrassed that her hubby, Francis Macomber, is a coward because he ran from a lion that every step of the way she can't help but mention it, that he ran away, that he's a coward, and everybody's embarrassed, and she's embarrassed for him, and she has all of these snide remarks, these pathetic, lame, gross remarks about his manhood and everything. She tries to demolish and deconstruct and destroy and disintegrate this man in every way possible, from every angle. And listen, what Hemingway does here is that he just reveals the classic female tactic of what a woman usually does to destroy a man, in every aspect, from his pride, from his, manhood, from, to basically emasculate him in every way. Hemingway does such an amazing job with this character because he fully exposes, the classic female mindset and the classic female tactic when it comes to destroying a man, with all of these allusions and all of these insinuations and all of these suggestions, right? Absolutely flabbergasting, right? And, she not only pokes at him every step of the way, calling him a coward, blah, blah, blah. She keeps on mentioning in subtle and not so subtle ways that he ran from a lion, which is a real shame, She openly flirts with the with the chief hunter that is guiding them on this safari. Openly, right in front of her husband, Francis Macomber, she is basically cucking him in plain view, in front of everybody in the crew. Trying to shame him, trying to emasculate him in every way. And afterwards, she actually goes and sleeps with this guide in order to hurt Francis Macomber. That is the only reason she does this. She sleeps with the guide to hurt Francis Macomber, right? Classic female tactic, okay? All of these silly mind games, and then later on we find out that this bitch, this is not the first time that she does this. We find out that she has a record. She has a body count, okay? She has been cheating on our poor boy, Francis Macomber, multiple times. She has a history, okay? I told you, she's a thotty. She belongs to the streets. I think her name is Margot, if I'm remembering correctly, right? So we find out that this is not the first time that this bitch cheats on Macomber, right? And she has, all throughout this short story, she has this fucking superior attitude, bitch made, okay? And this is, Hemingway writes so exceptionally well in this one, because I was so annoyed throughout this, because the main theme is cowardice, and cowardice is bad, but in the context of this story, Francis Macomber, we begin by finding out that they were, on safari, and they stumbled upon a lion, and this lion charged at Francis Macomber, and he got cold feet, he turned yellow, and he ran away, even though he had a rifle. And everybody in this safari, and in this group, they can't give this guy a break. Everybody is ashamed. Oh my God, this guy, he was such a coward. He was such a pussy, right? And all the while, I'm like, bro, this guy ran from a fucking lion. Okay, yeah, he had a rifle, but everybody talks the talk, but when it comes time to walk the walk, not a lot of people can deliver. So I wasn't, so critical when it comes to our boy Francis Macomber. Yeah, he ran from a charging lion. Yeah, even, let me tell you, you would be running too if a fucking lion came at you, even though you had a gun, right? And all these characters in this short story, they can't stop fucking, poking fun and criticizing Macomber for being a coward. Yeah, let me tell you, I would have run too if a grown ass lion came at me, bruh. Right? And it's so annoying. They almost have hatred for Francis Macomber. Oh my God, this guy, bruh, he ran from a lion, bruh. If it were me, bruh. I mean, this guy's a pussy, bruh. And I'm just like, nah. Let me tell you, anybody, if they were put in this situation, they would have ran, they would have pissed themselves, etc. I don't care if you're armed to the teeth. Your natural instincts, they take over, they overwhelm. And you would have ran, I would have ran, everybody would have ran. Fear, is universal. I don't care how brave you are. I don't care if you're a Giga Chad, okay? My view is that a lot of Giga Chads, if put face to face with a big ass lion, they would have pissed themselves and they would have ran, no problem, easy, and then as we read along, we stumble upon yet another lion, and Francis Macomber, guess what? He chickens out again, okay? Which is natural, which is, of course, to be expected, okay? To be expected, So twice, this guy gets scared. He he is overwhelmed by fear and he runs away again, you know. Uh, and it's such a, it's such a, I would say that The Short and a Happy Life of Francis Macomber is such a brilliant expose on, the expectations of manhood and what a man should be. This is classic Hemingway. Never be afraid of anybody. I'm a man's man. If a lion comes at you, you wrestle that bitch to the ground with your bare hands. Yeah, it ain't gonna happen, bro. It ain't gonna happen. Oh boy, who would have thought that who would have thought that people are generally cowards and people generally are afraid? Yeah, yeah. Let me see you tackle a lion, huh? It's so embarrassing, right? It's so funny that they make such a big deal that this guy ran. Oh my God, he's a coward. And I'm like, yeah, yeah, because it's a lion, bruh. Like, right? And let me tell you, if these brave hunters didn't have their rifles, let me tell you, they would have ran too. With all of their experience and expertise, they would have ran no problem, just the same, right? And it's such a brilliant expose on the expectations of what a man should be, and have no fear, never, you know, you should never be a coward. You should always be on top. And this is a, of course, it's a fantasy. It's a fiction, right? Okay. Most people, men or women or whatever, they are cowards. Even though they talk the talk, they can't walk the walk. Okay. And in the end, uh, something happens. I think it's with a rhino, if I'm not mistaken. And this this third encounter, Francis Macomber, he doesn't run away. He stands his ground, uh, and something happens to him. He undergoes a transformation, and I guess he kind of gets reborn. And now, because he has experienced what it's like to be brave, he becomes a new man. He basically becomes happy. He is overwhelmed with this ecstasy, right? But because he stands his ground and this rhino is charging at him, his wife, the Thoughty that cheated on him, she suddenly becomes worried about him, and she points her rifle at the rhino that's charging, and unfortunately, guess what? The dumb bitch, instead of hitting the rhino that's about to kill her husband, she actually hits Francis Macomber, her husband, in the head, and he dies instantly. Right? And it's kind of made out to be a sort of accident, but I would say, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't trust this bitch. This bitch is mad suspect. Okay, so Margot, I truly believe that she did this on purpose with premeditation. She killed this guy, and she gets off scot-free for murdering her husband, right? It's a brilliant, brilliant short story. This is where Hemingway is at his peak. The characters are on point. The writing is crisp. The prose exactly the same. Absolutely peak. Okay. Another one that kind of caught my attention was, of course, the snows of Kilimanjaro, where, of course, we have another safari, and our character got, I don't know, he got a scratch on his leg, and now he has gangrene, and he's dying. And they're waiting for a plane, and the plane is not coming, and even though he is on his deathbed, he's kind of arguing with his wife, which is hilarious, and By the end, the plane comes, but it is too late. And as they fly, they see the white peaks of Kilimanjaro, and of course, our character dies from the infection. And it's just a beautiful uh, ending to this short story. But it wasn't as poignant or potent as I imagined it would be. There's a lot of arguing between spouses, and I remember ever since years and years ago, ever since I watched Cowboy Bebop, if you remember, in one of the last or second to last episodes, there is this short story, "The Snows of Kilimanjaro," is mentioned in probably the last or second to last episode, and it's such a beautiful scene. And ever since then, ever since I watched Cowboy Bebop, I wanted to read "The Snows of Kilimanjaro," and it wasn't as how should I call it? It wasn't as as heartbreaking. Yeah, that's the word. "The Snows of Kilimanjaro" wasn't as heartbreaking as I assumed it would be. It is better explained in Cowboy Bebop, I would say. Okay. Another one that caught my attention was, of course, the Indian Village, where this kind of alter ego or self-insert of Hemingway, Nick Adams, is introduced, and it's a really short story, but uh, it yet again, Hemingway excels at capturing something essential. This little boy, Nick Adams, he witnesses firsthand. This little boy witnesses death, and birth at the same time in this Indian village. And by the end, um, he asks his father, what it's like. Is it hard to die? And I think the father says, no, it's not. It's not as hard as you would think. And of course, they talk about suicide, and if a lot of people commit suicide, and the father is really frank about giving these serious answers to this little kid and these really serious questions. And by the end, this little boy feels like he will never die. And that's how the short story ends. And listen, there are a lot of these Nick Adams short stories in here, which I think are the most. They are the closest to, sort of, let's call it a autobiography of Hemingway. It's obviously a self-insert, and I just didn't really feel for them. The Nick Adams stories, overall, they just left me indifferent. There is another one. I think it's Mr. and Mrs. Elliot. I think this is the one where yet again we have these spouses, this couple, and they're arguing. Of course, the classic Hemingway setting. A couple arguing, and here is what is so interesting about this is that I was spoiled when it comes to this short story because I watched a couple of reviews, because otherwise I wouldn't have noticed the subtlety that this short story is actually about abortion. Like, there is no way that most readers would have caught this, okay? These two characters are arguing. The man is insisting, "Oh, you should really do it. I'll pay for it. I'll take care of you. It's a very easy procedure. It ain't no biggie. It ain't no problem. You should do it." And while you're reading this, you're like, bro, what the hell are these two characters arguing? And there is no way that you can actually decipher the fact that they're arguing about, her having an abortion, because it's just so roundabout. They're beating around the bush. The actual word never comes into the center of it all. I think the guy only says, oh, they just push some air, and that's it. And I'm just like, is that how abortion used to be conducted in the early 1900s? They just blow some air and that's it. Like, this actual subject, this actual topic of abortion, I think it just goes over everybody's head, because it's just so Hemingway just beats around the bush. He's being so subtle with it. There is no way you can actually understand what they're actually talking about. And if you don't understand that this is actually about abortion, you don't really understand why the woman is so upset and so, frantic. We have, mountains like white elephants, and then we have the killers, okay? And let me tell you, when it comes to the killers, right? It's so cliche. It's just so. The killers is something interesting. It's just so, out of character for Hemingway. The killers is just so. I would say that the killers is just, dead ass, just a bland story for mass consumption. With these two gangsters that go into this country town diner, and they're being wise guys, and they just got guns, and they're here to kill somebody, and they tie everybody up in the diner, and they're being wise guys, and it's just so hilarious. I don't know. Did Hemingway write The Killers as a sort of parody of some sort? Because it seems so serious. These two killers, they're very serious about, being these, archetypal thugs. Like, you're a wise guy, huh? It's hilarious. Then we have, a clean and well lit place, and another archetypal thing or theme when it comes to Hemingway. We have bullfighting, of course, a lot of bullfighting, and then we have a lot of hunting, every aspect of hunting and every aspect of fishing. And then we have, war. And, of course, the war stories in these two collections are just, whatever. We read about all of these soldiers in the context of usually the First World War, and they're having these general discussions about whatever and the enemy and blah 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 blah, and about Spain and the revolution in Spain and the war in Spain. Oh boy, Hemingway was a big defender of the, he cared about the war in Spain, and this is yet again, he just writes about little snippets, little episodes about war, and he just doesn't really hit the nail on the head. It's just a bunch of soldiers talking whatever. Not to say that they don't have golden nuggets in them, but Hemingway doesn't do what somebody like J.D. Salinger does. Is just not hyper focusing on something that will get the attention of the reader. I'm not immersed in these war stories. I don't care about what's happening. I don't care about the characters, because if we're being honest, they're kind of banal. I would say that if you write about something like war, even if it's a short story, make your reader care. Just don't write these lame conversations about I don't know, these soldiers. Usually this is what Hemingway does. There are a uh, various kinds of soldiers, different nationalities, American, Italian, French, uh, Spanish, whatever, and they're usually drinking, and they're fighting the Germans or whatever, and Hungarians and whatever, and they're usually drinking, and there's not enough food, and they're partying, and somebody gets killed maybe, and oh boy, and that's it, and I don't care about any of this. And listen, I think I'm gonna leave it at that when it comes to Papa, and his short stories. This is how I would classify the essence of Hemingway's short stories. Some of them are absolutely exceptional. Most of them are that it seems to me, in my view, it seems to me that a lot of these short stories of Hemingway's are him exercising his writing. This is very important, folks. His short stories seem to me that he is just exercising his writing. He's practicing. These short stories are not his top priority, and it shows in the writing. It shows in the plots, in the narrative, in the prose, in the characters. He is just practicing. He is exercising. He is not 110% invested in these short stories. He's just exercising his writing because he had a schedule. He wrote every day, and it's plainly obvious. It's plainly obvious that he was just practicing. He was warming up, And I don't appreciate that because I'm a writer myself. And I think, of course, I'm not on Hemingway's caliber, but I think if you are going to write anything, I don't care if it's a short story or a novel or a novella, if you're going to write something, put everything in it. Put every bit of your soul into it. Put every passion. Don't just practice. Don't just exercise your writing. Put everything in it. Because if you put everything in it, the reader will notice. Okay? And I've noticed that with few exceptions, like Francis Macomber and a couple of other that I've mentioned, a lot of these short stories are, I mean, should I say it? They're kind of subpar. He was just exercising. He was just practicing. The Nick Adams short stories are, what is all of this? What is all of this? And there is this thing. And Hemingway mentions this time and time again in these collections. He says, because of course he writes about writers. Of course he writes about himself being a writer, blah, blah, blah. He says that a writer should write what he knows about intimately. Write what you know about. Of course, that's a good advice. But Hemingway here, Papa, I mean, he just can't stop talking about, again, the trivia about hunting and bullfighting and fishing and Cuba, Cuba and all of these bars that he frequented and blah, 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 blah. And those bars ain't what they used to be back in the good old days. And it's all fun and dandy but then you realize that he can't stop. He can't stop. And let's talk about France. Let's talk about, remember Paris? Wow. You know what it was like to live in Paris in the early 1900s, and you're just so, yeah, bro. And then he can't stop talking about, he went to this cafe and that cafe and his writing and writing this and meeting other writers and the war and blah, 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 blah. And he kind of becomes a broken record because he doesn't focus on the serious things that obsesses a person, that possesses a person with a sort of morbid and sinister you know, frenzy. He just writes about whatever, about traveling and traveling to all of these places, and it's just so. I mean, it's I don't want to call it soulless, but it's just I don't know. The problem is, and this is the problem. This is the problem that I had I had extremely high expectations of Hemingway, and I thought, oh boy, I finally got some of his short stories. It's gonna be a blast, and it wasn't. It wasn't, and Hemingway, the greatest giga chad of them all in literature and otherwise, and I don't want to attack his monument. He invented this minimalistic style. Oh boy, but it's just so 90% of these short stories leave me indifferent. Leave me indifferent. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the honest truth. In conclusion, to me, this is what my opinion of Hemingway's short stories is that he was just practicing most of the time, exercising his writing, warming up, because it seems to me that he warmed up with a short story and then he went on afterwards to write his main novel, whatever that novel was at the time. And this is it. This is quintessential. There are absolutely devastating golden nuggets in Hemingway that just come out of the woodwork, and they're a surprise. They're a surprise. They astonish. They just catch you off guard, and it's beautiful, right? But most of the time, I was just zoning out, daydreaming, which is unfortunate, right? Right. If you're gonna write something, just put everything in it. I'm not here to read about a little, I still don't understand Hemingway's fascination with bullfighting and matadors and these little short stories about the little lives of these matadors. And he's gonna tell us everything about these matadors and their little hats. And didn't you know that they used to have this little braid of hair like fucking Padawans, from Star Wars, Jedis and shit, and he's gonna tell us all the fucking details about bullfighting. And this is exactly what I needed to see, to read about some grown ass man in tights, performing ballet tricks and ballet maneuvers around a bull with a little sword. Obviously, you probably noticed that bullfighting is not interesting to me. But that's about it. If you enjoy this content, if you wanna support your boy, I got a few books of my own. They are on Amazon. The link will be down below. Thanks for watching. Keep on reading good books. See ya. Papa! Papa!